Hi everyone, I just want to go over your theory and rationale paper with you through this video. As you can see, I'm in Unit 3 and I'm going to go down here to the theory and rationale paper and we're going to look at how to do this. So the first document we're going to look at is a good theory and rationale paper. So here it is. This is what your theory and rationale paper is going to do. You're going to introduce or summarize the issue, your population and risk factors in a few paragraphs. You've already done this before. It will be 1 to 3 paragraphs. Then you're going to introduce at least one model and clearly explain how it relates to the issue and or your program. Your application to your program is what demonstrates that you understand the model. You've done this already in an assignment. This you have not done. You're going to have a brief explanation of what the program looks like. And while none of you have a program that's fully developed, I think almost everyone has an idea of some things they want to make happen in the program. Then you're going to be working with this planning chart that you've seen in an assignment. And we're going to look at goals, community goals, and objectives in the assignment. And then you're going to summarize the issue and paper. And the summary is similar to the introduction, but it is usually shorter. It has similar data and similar wording, but it's not exactly the same. So these are the headings I want you to use in your paper. The first one is an introduction. Here you're going to summarize the issue and the paper. You're going to tell what the issue is with epidemiological data. You're going to introduce the general and possibly specific population, and you're going to identify the risk factors you're addressing. You've already done this. So because this is a writing course, you are expected to tweak what you've already done and reuse it. If you have something perfect, you copy and paste it into this paper. If you have something that needs some improvement, you improve it and then put it in this paper. The next heading is theory and model, and this is where you're going to introduce one model and clearly explain how it relates to the issue. You do not have to explain the model. You just need to show how you can apply it to the issue or your program. When you apply it to your program, that shows you understand it. Next, the heading is program description, and there's where you're going to explain some ideas of what you'd like your program to look like. Your goals and objectives, this will be the planning chart that you're using, and this has to be in landscape format, so as you submit your paper, if you know how to go from portrait to landscape and back to portrait, you can keep it in your paper. However, if you don't know how to do that, you'll have an extra attachment. And finally, you'll have a summary of what you've just done. And again, the summary will look like the introduction. It will be shorter. It will have similar words, but different words, and it will say the same thing. So that's what a good paper does. What I want to look at with you now is some samples of what you're going to be doing in the paper. So here we are. This is parts of the paper. So what this part of the paper is, this has to do with your theory section. And so in the theory section, as you can see, there's a very brief analysis or description of the problem. And then there is a sentence that says, the diagnosis in breast cancer in minority women could be related to the precede-proceed model. You can use any model that you'd like. You've already submitted an assignment that had some of this in there with specific feedback. And usually the feedback that I give you is that this column is not specific enough. You can write this in narrative or you can put it in a chart like I have here, whichever is easier for you. In this column over here, you have the key elements of the model. And then in this column, you show how it applies to your program and or population and or issue. And then there's just a little summary of what the program is, but it's not the program description. I just want to show you what this part of the paper looks like. Then we have the goals handout, and this is the part that is in a landscape format. It must be in landscape format. You're going to put the grant goals that we have approved of. Each goal gets its own chart. So you'll have your grant goal, then you have your community goal. And if you look at the community goal, it is exactly what the grant goal is, except you identify your specific community. So in this one, it would say in Highlandtown and Park Heights in Baltimore City, Maryland. But you actually put your specific community. It's the grant goal with your community. Next, we have the 3-column chart. This is the column that is required for this paper. This column is optional. It's in your best interest to try to do one or two of these cells to get feedback, because on your next paper, this will be required. So let's look at first this objective columns. So you've had practice writing objectives a couple different times now, and what you're going to be doing is you're going to be selecting the best objectives you have, and you're going to tweak the ones that are not so perfect and make them better, and you're going to put them in the objective column. This is actually a form of a logic model because it's a visual layout of your program, just like the other logic model. It just looks different. So here we have, by the end of the first year, minority women in the program will show a 25% improvement in attitude toward mammography. You've only been doing one objective in each row, but I'm going to tell you at this point you need to start to put in a series of objectives in each row. So by the end of the first year, 25% improvement. By the end of the second year, what's going to happen? By the end of the third year, what's going to happen? If you don't have these 3 years in here, when the person reads your chart, it looks like for 1 year you're going to address attitude and then you're done with it. And that's not typically what people are doing. So if you're planning to cover something over 3 years, then put in first, second, and third year. They all go in the same row because they're all going to be evaluated the same way, and the strategies will be the same over all 3 years. So here again, there is a 1 year. Here is one. It says by the end of the program, which is 3 years, baseline mammography will increase. What's going to happen the first and second year? While this might be your 3-year objective, it's probably a good idea to not wait until the third year to measure this. It's probably a good idea to have an objective for first and second year to see if you're on the right track. So this is an example of a planning chart for one goal. Sometimes people ask, well, how many objectives should there be? And the answer is as many as it takes to hit the goal. Sometimes a person could have an objective that's so well written that they only need 1 or 2, but usually you need many objectives to hit the goal. And as you can see, there are many here. So let's look at this evaluation column. In the evaluation column, what you're doing is you're taking a stab at or a guess at how you would evaluate this objective. How would you prove that this objective actually happened? Like I said, this entire column is optional. However, it's a really good idea to put a couple items in here and there to get feedback because they will be required in your next paper, your IE paper. Okay, and the only other thing I want to look at with you is the scoring rubric. Here's the scoring rubric, and when we open it, you're going to see that it's exactly what we just talked about. So I'm going to be grading. Do you have an introduction paragraph that defines the with 2 to 3 paragraphs introducing the problem, the population, and you should mention your risk factors. Then the next thing that gets scored is, do you have a theory? That by clearly defined, it means you might have 1 or 2 sentences about it, but most of the definition will come in the fact that you can apply it to your program. And there's an example of how to do that we just looked at. That was in a chart, but you could also do it in a narrative. Use your assignments from class to help guide you in this. Then you have the planning chart. And when I look at the planning chart, the first thing I'm going to look at is to see, do your theories, goals, and objectives, are they designed to meet the goals of the grant? Then I'm going to look at, are your theories, goals, and objectives aligned with each other? And finally, I'm going to look at your objectives to see if they're measurable, if they're SMART. As you can see, there's no grading criteria for that third column, but again, if you fill anything into the third column, then you will get feedback for your next paper. And then here's the formatting, spelling, grammar, APA, and style like it is in every paper. This is the first paper that you are not allowed to rewrite. However, when you start to write this paper, I think you're going to find it much easier to write because of the research and writing that you've already done so far this semester. So that concludes my explanation of the theory and rationale paper in this recording. Please make sure you jot down any questions you have so that we can talk about them the next time we meet. And if you'd prefer not to wait until we meet, we could try to work through email, or you could set up a video meeting with me to talk about your questions. I look forward to talking to you about the theory and rationale paper, and I will see you soon.